Sauerkraut is one of the healthiest and easiest foods that you can make at home, and it only takes a handful of ingredients. Different countries make it differently. Poland, for example, uses carrots like you see me using here. Germany likes to use caraway seeds and sometimes juniper berries. And for the most part, you can use pretty much any vegetable so long as it's a root vegetable. So gather up the ingredients that you'd like. You're going to want to weigh these out so that you can determine how much salt you need to put into it. So when it comes to the salt, it's 1.5 teaspoons of salt per pound of food, or if you like it extra salty, you can do 2 teaspoons of salt per pound. Once your vegetables are all washed and clean, you can either shred them using a machine or you can do it by hand. That part's completely up to you. But get everything all shredded up nice and neatly. And be sure to double check your measurements so that you don't put too much or too little salt. Too little will cause issues all on its own. Too much can just be a little bit overwhelming. You can use pretty much any salt that you would like. I would just stay away from the iodized stuff. Personally, I like the Baja Gold, the minerals, just because I enjoy the extra minerals that this salt provides. And put your 1.5 or 2 teaspoons, depending on your preference, into your bowl and give it a good mix up. You're not really trying to go overboard and massage just yet, but you do want to incorporate the salt into everything as much as possible. Try to coat everything and get it all worked up. Now you're going to set your timer for 15 minutes and just let it sit here. During this time, it's going to draw out a lot of the water from the cabbage. After your 15 minutes is up, you will set your timer again for 5 minutes, and this time you are going to massage the food together. You're going to squeeze and break apart any clumps. You're trying to incorporate all of the salt together and really mush everything down. It's going to create its own liquid in the bottom of the bowl, which you're going to need for the next step. Just FYI, this is a great color for Easter eggs. Once your 5 minutes is up, we're going to transfer this over into a crock. Now, if you do not have a crock, that's not a problem. I'm going to share some tips that you can use in place of one. But for now, we're going to put that in there, and I'm going to try to push it down, and I'm going to make sure that there is enough liquid. As you can see, there isn't. You have to have enough to cover the top of your food. So we're going to make a 2% solution, and that's basically 1 teaspoon of salt per 1 cup of water. And you're not trying to drown your food. You don't want to put too much in here, but you do want it to cover just the top. So you're going to mix that up really good, get it incorporated, and like I said, just enough to cover the top of the food. Now, most crocks come with these weights. Again, if you don't have one, not a problem. I do have a hack for you. Just hang tight. You'll push these down and making sure that all the food is underneath the weight and underneath that liquid. Anything that comes out on top, stays on top, will get moldy, and it could ruin the whole thing for you. Now we'll put our lid on and come back tomorrow.
If you don't have a crock, that's perfectly fine. What you can do is get a big bowl, anything like this in your house. You can even use like a 5-gallon bucket from Lowe's or Home Depot. Just make sure it's clean. Let's say this is our sauerkraut that's all down in the bottom. All you'll need to do is just take a regular plate, set that on top, push it down, make sure the liquid is high enough to go over the plate, but keep the food underneath, and then just use a weight. You can use a glass jar with water in it. You can use a Ziploc bag with water in it. Just something to help weigh that down.
Every day, or at the very most every other day, you'll come in and check on your sauerkraut. Start by removing the weights and take a look and see how much more liquid is in there. There's a lot more than there was just the other day. Looking good. So we're going to stir this up really well, massage it all in, make sure there's no food stuck to the side of the crock. And then we're going to pat it back down, put our weight on it, and we're going to do this process every day, or again, every other day, for a minimum of 2 weeks up to 6 months. Now, the time it takes for this to ferment is completely depending on your taste. The longer it sits, the more sour it becomes. I have found that 3 weeks is about the mark for me. I really like it. I can go longer, but the bitter just seems to take over for my taste buds. So just stir it up, take a taste of it every once in a while and see where you're at. When you're happy with it, then it's time to take it out of the crock and go on to our next step. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance because this next scene, I literally forgot I was recording. I was in my own mind thinking about what I had to do with the kids and with work, and I forgot about the whole thing. So, at this point, all I'm doing is running the mixture under water. You do not have to do this. I'm just not a big fan of over salty sauerkraut. If you like the salt, keep the liquid. But for the most part, that's all I did during this scene, so you didn't miss much. So here we are after it's been run through the water, and I'm just going to put it into my mason jars. The 2 heads of cabbage and the carrot ended up giving me 3 quarts of the sauerkraut. Now, when it comes to storage, I keep these in my refrigerator, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. But if you want to prolong it, all you have to do is vacuum seal it. And this is just simply pure water. That's all that is. And that's the entire process. There's not much to it. It's just time consuming. And this is my little vacuum sealer. I got it off of TikTok. Okay, so how do you store this? Now, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I say do not pressure can and do not water bath can these. The reason for that is because commercial canners are able to do it really fast and not kill the good bacteria that is inside of your sauerkraut. The whole purpose of eating this is because it has so many good benefits and bacteria that are fantastic for your microbiome in your gut. And when we pressure can or water bath can at home, what we're doing is we're killing all the bacteria, good and bad. So what I suggest doing is making this in small batches. As you can see, I ended up with only 3 quarts. What I do is I vacuum seal them and keep them in my refrigerator. Now, the USDA will tell you they're good for a couple of weeks in your refrigerator. That's not the case. Personally, my last batch, I made so much of it, put it in the fridge, and the longest jar lasted over a year in my refrigerator. The vacuum seal will help to secure it, plus it's fermented anyways. The entire process of making sauerkraut is you're technically letting it rot. It's not going to go bad in your refrigerator. Matter of fact, it will begin to sour and become more potent in flavor the longer it's in your refrigerator. Now, I didn't show it in the video, but I personally add a splash of white vinegar inside of mine just for an extra kick, kind of like how your pickles taste. You do not have to do that. It is completely up to you. That is just a personal preference of mine. The hardest part about making sauerkraut is the waiting. But once your couple of weeks is up, or however long it takes for yours to get to the flavor that you like, once that's over with, you can just sit back and enjoy it.